This is the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
What's up, Detroit sports fans? Welcome to the Fan Report, a show made by fans for fans, powered by the Detroit Sports Podcast Network. I'm Nick, and joining us today is our boy Anders, going to give us this week's topics.
Well, it took about one quarter for the Lions to lose to Tampa this weekend, and it took two OTs for the Pistons to lose to the Cavaliers this weekend. We'll talk about both of them. It's a Fan Report.
It was in the Pistons. I guess in the Pistons, it was a struggle of a battle of who could be at the bottom of the Eastern Conference and maybe even the NBA.
This was a good loss, guys. Let's be honest.
It was. In all reality, it was. And then if you look on the other side with the Lions, it was, are they masquerading is a high school team masquerading as a professional football team? Because that's certainly what it looked like on Saturday with the way that team played. It was, my God.
I mean, it doesn't help that they had a research assistant, a defensive coordinator.
No, it did not help. Safe to say that Robert Prince is not going to be in the running for the head coaching gig.
They had like a janitor at special teams.
Well, they guess that they probably shouldn't have fired their special teams coordinator.
Yeah,
so
seriously,
gonna throw that out there. But I mean, there's really not much to talk about from that game. It was just an absolute shit show. Anytime you see a team put up like 27 or 35, whatever it was, points in the first half, and then they bench their starting quarterback, and then you proceed to go 3 and out to start the second half, and then their backup quarterback proceeds to throw. No, you give up a fumble at the start of the second half, and then their backup quarterback proceeds to throw a touchdown on like the first or second play from scrimmage. Like, that's the ultimate disrespect.
Is this rock bottom for Lions fans in the last, like, since in the Stafford era for Lions fans?
I mean, Stafford really didn't even play. He was out.
Well, I know. I'm
saying
in the Stafford era since Stafford was drafted in this Matthew Stafford Lions era. Is this rock bottom?
Well, didn't they go 0-16? Technically speaking?
No 0-6. That was the year we got, like, after.
That was the year after.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. I wasn't sure because I know early on in his career he ended up being hurt, and so I wasn't sure if that was in there.
Because this certainly feels like rock bottom of the modern or
I'll
quote
be
unquote
honest
Stafford
with you,
era.
this one hurt less than like blowing it against the Packers when they put up 50 points.
It hurt less because obviously, like, there's no stakes anymore at this point.
No, like it hurt less because it was honestly comical. Like, I was laughing. This was one of the most fun games I've watched all season long for the Lions.
But I'm not saying like rock bottom in terms of like, oh, this like this is a brutal loss. Like, rock bottom in terms of this is the worst this team has looked in I don't know how long.
Yes, in terms of what I saw on the football field this past weekend and on Saturday, yes, this is the worst I have ever seen.
Nationally televised, just get embarrassed.
I'm gonna even go beyond and say that this is the worst Lions team I've ever seen. This is This is probably the worst professional football performance I have ever seen in my lifetime. I, honest to God, have never seen more ineptitude on a football field in the NFL in my lifetime.
And
they couldn't stop a damn thing.
Got followed by the Clippers today.
Blaine Gabbert looked good. Gabbert looked good.
143 and 2 touchdowns and 15 passes.
And 0 picks. That's embarrassing. Like, that's a half of football. He threw 2 touchdowns on you. And meanwhile, Brady threw 4 in the first half. Like,
if they left Brady in, he would have set the yardage record.
There would be no record left in the books for Brady not to break it after that one if he stayed in the whole game and they kept the pedal down. Like, to see them, honestly, when they went for it on 4th down and like 3 on their own 40 in the first half, I just up 27-7 or 27-0. I started dying laughing and said, that is probably the coldest thing I have ever seen in my life. And I loved it. I loved it. But, honestly, I
mean, we're that much closer to a decent pick, but like,
the best case scenario for pick is like 6th pick, I think.
I was about to say, like, I don't think we can get top 5.
No, I think your best case scenario is 6th pick. Can you still get that 6th pick? Yes, you can. It's just a lot of things have to go your way. You're probably looking more in like the 7, 8, 9 range. With that being said, though, there could be some positives on the horizon in terms of the quarterback search. And I also have a question for you regarding next year's quarterback as is. Justin Fields is looking like he's probably going to drop quite a bit in the draft at this point. He hasn't looked impressive later on in the year. He's only played half a schedule in all reality against Big Ten opponents only. In the Big Ten championship, he did not look good. And as far as I know, and as far as I've seen in terms of the mocks and the hype around it, Zach Wilson has passed him in mock drafts and in people's eyes. So that means that Justin Wilson is likely to fall down people's draft. Justin Fields, not Justin Wilson. Jesus. Justin Fields is likely to fall down people's draft boards. So that could mean that the Lions at 6, 7, 8, 9 could potentially end up with Justin Fields in their lap. Do you take a shot on Justin Fields and move on from Matthew Stafford at that point, knowing the risk an Ohio State quarterback comes with? Because I don't think a single one has ever been successful in the NFL. Not at the quarterback position anyways.
Yeah, I think back to, what's his face? Troy
Smith?
Yeah. The Heisman from Ohio State, I really liked, I remember at the time. And I remember him coming in and just busting. And Justin Fields, I'm not going to say it reminds me of that because the only thing similar they have is that they both can run. That's really all they have in common. But if we're sitting there at number 6 and Justin Fields is staring in the face, you got to weigh the options here because you're likely going to have one of those Bama receivers like a Jamar Chase or Devontae Smith available at number 6. And knowing the Lions and the uncertain future of Kenny Golladay, you're probably going to need a receiver too. I'm not in love with taking another corner or another offensive lineman. So honestly, if one of those receivers is there, I think I lean in that direction unless you find a trade partner for Matthew Stafford. If you find a trade partner for Matthew Stafford, then go Justin Fields because you're going to need someone there. But I'm not too high. I'm not as high as a lot of NFL mock draft or draft analysts are on Justin Fields because
I'm not either.
Like you said, I'm wary of Ohio State quarterbacks in pro systems.
Right.
So I would lean taking one of those Bama receivers at where we're picking right now.
You know, I don't hate the idea, and I've got another reason why you want to go that route. And this is regardless of if you find a trade partner for Matthew Stafford or not. Mm-hmm. If you do, I still don't go Justin Fields here. I still look at maybe Devontae Smith or
just don't give me Chase Daniel again. Just let him.
Right. No. I got an idea. I have an idea, and I'm curious to hear your thoughts on it. But I'm looking at next year's quarterback. I'm looking at the Lions to potentially in this offseason go after and try to get Sam Darnold to bring him in for a 1-year tryout. See what this guy's got with a better offensive line, because the Lions' offensive line is really, in all reality, not bad. They've got a very solid left side of the line with a running back in DeAndre Swift who looks to be an actual talent, and with a potential wide receiver pairing of Kenny Golladay or maybe Devontae Smith or maybe even both. And you give him legitimate weapons with one of those two receivers or both, and TJ Hawkinson and DeAndre Swift with a solid O-line on the left-hand side, maybe even on the right gets a little bit better. Maybe Sam Darnold becomes your quarterback of the future. And if not, and you're still bad, well, you end up with a solid draft pick and you find a quarterback next year in what could potentially be a better draft.
The only silver line I can find in trying to bring Sam Darnold on is, again, it's just he's on such a bad team that maybe it's a product of the environment at this point.
Exactly. It may just be a change of scenery because we've seen flashes from him of being a good quarterback. He was still very highly touted coming into the league. So maybe there's still something there with Sam Darnold that could potentially be on the right team in the right situation, a good opportunity.
But I'll be honest, I don't watch a ton of Jets games. I couldn't really tell you definitively what the issue is with Sam Darnold. So that's why that little bit of unknown still kind of scares me.
Let's just say that Sam Darnold's not their problem. Is he a solution for them? No, but he's not their problem. I don't think any quarterback not named Aaron Rodgers or I don't even know is going to win with that football team. So I think Sam Darnold is in a bad spot. I do think he needs to change the scenery, and the Lions giving him and honestly, it's probably going to come pretty cheap. So a 1-year tryout, what's it hurt? What's it hurt? You are going to be right back where you are now anyways. So regardless of if you bring him in and trade Stafford or not, I don't think this team wins next year with Matthew Stafford and a new head coach. I don't think they're a head coach away from winning. I think that there's a lot of things on this team that they need desperately to be a winning franchise. And it starts with a head coach, sure, but that's not all of it. And so that brings me to my next question for you of there's more and more hype around Louis Riddick potentially becoming the Lions' next GM. And he's very vocal about his love for Matthew Stafford, saying, even going as far as saying if he was the Lions GM, he'd bring him back. So
no,
does that
don't get me wrong. Don't get me wrong. I love Matthew Stafford. It's just I kind of want to salvage whatever value we can get out of him and just kind of rebuild this whole thing. Like his timeline is it's a situation where his age timeline is no longer going to line up with when this team's going to compete. So let's try to just salvage what we can for him and try to rebuild this thing on the fly. But no, that doesn't make me like more wary about Louis Riddick coming in. I'm already kind of wary about Louis Riddick coming in because I still don't know what his qualifications are.
As am I. Like I mean, he hasn't been in a front office of an organization since like 2013. The game has changed since then. I know he's an analyst and he stays on top of the game, but it's easy being a Monday morning GM or a Monday morning head coach or a Tuesday morning head coach and not, an actual GM in the spot. It's a completely different type of role. So am I overly confident Louis Riddick being a guy that would turn around this franchise? No, I'm not. He's a little bit further down on my list of candidates, if I had to be honest with you. Yeah. Is he a popular name? Yes, but he's not in my book.
I'm in the camp of like if you were to choose and not move on from Matthew Stafford, it's not going to like make me mad. Like it's not a deal breaker for me. Like I still think Matthew Stafford's a really good quarterback. It's just the GM in me wants to salvage what value we can, and now is the time to pull the trigger on something like that.
I mean, I would be a little bit disappointed if the Lions decided to not move on from Matthew Stafford. And for, multiple reasons here. I mean, one, I don't think Matthew Stafford's ever really going to do anything here. Two, I want him to go somewhere and win. I want him to be successful. I want him to add to his resume to be in the Hall of Fame.
With a better
team. I do too. Like, I as well. I mean, you put him on the Colts. I think that team, one, wins their division, and two, potentially competes for a Super Bowl. But I don't think he's going to win with this team. And so I'd like to see him go on and be successful somewhere else. But from our standpoint, I don't think this team is 1 or 2 years away from winning a Super Bowl. So with that being said, if they're not,
the timeline doesn't line up.
Right. He's what? 33 years old now. I'll give you his actual age, but he's 32 years old now, and he's turning 33 in February before the total season is over. So he'll come into next year at age 33. You're not even 2 years away from a winning organization here. So are you going to tell me that a 36-year-old Matthew Stafford's going to come in and win? Because I'll tell you the answer is no. Not with the way his body's been going. Hell no. So I don't see a reason for keeping Matthew Stafford. It just doesn't make sense to me. It doesn't fit the timeline. Do I love Matthew Stafford, love him here in Detroit? Yes, I would love to see him retire as a Lion. But again, it does not fit our timeline. And honestly, it pushes our timeline back, if anything. Because again, with Matthew Stafford, I don't think this team will ever be bad enough to be a number 1, 2, or 3 pick to have a chance at the elite quarterbacks.
Does the way Fitzpatrick came in and took over that game after they pulled Tua, does that give you a little bit of relief that we didn't take him, or because Tua's played well? It's not like he's played poorly.
No, he wasn't even playing poorly in that game.
Yeah, I know.
He just wasn't able to advance the ball downfield. They don't have the confidence in him, and he doesn't have the confidence or the comfortability to push the ball downfield in a very quick fashion the way Ryan Fitzpatrick can. Ryan Fitzpatrick is a downfield threat quarterback. Tua's not that guy. He's a possession, dink and dunk. I think he only threw one pass over 15 yards in that game. So I think they're easing him into the offense to allow him to get his feet wet. So no, it doesn't make me feel any better about it because I do still think Tua's still learning the game, and he's been successful thus far. They've been winning with him at quarterback. So no, it doesn't change my mind. I still think we should have taken Tua. I still think we should have taken Herbert. It doesn't change my mind at all.
Anything else to touch on for the Lions?
One more, actually. I do have one more Lions point to bring up. There's been some rumblings, and this is related to the Chris Spielman hiring into the front office. There's been rumblings that Urban Meyer has shown some interest in becoming the Lions' next head coach. He says there's one of 2 teams he would be interested in. One of them is the Detroit Lions. Would you be interested in Urban Meyer coming and being the head coach of the Lions?
No.
Why not?
It's okay. Urban Meyer, fantastic head coach at Ohio State.
And Florida.
Florida. His biggest strength, in my mind, has been his ability to recruit. and the two systems that he coached in Florida and Ohio State aren't necessarily NFL systems. So on those two things,
I mean, Tebow came in and won a playoff game.
Yeah, but he didn't really stick in the NFL.
It's because he sucked.
So like on those two things alone, like the one of the things that makes him great, I think, is obviously he's irrelevant in the NFL in recruiting, and number two, on just the whole system that he plays, it's not an NFL system. I don't have confidence that his coaching would translate to success in the NFL. So I'm off board.
I mean, looking at it talent-wise, Ohio State players do translate to the NFL. There are a lot of very successful Ohio State talents in the NFL. However, the quarterback position in particular, right. Now, that's not to say that Urban Meyer wouldn't be a successful head coach in the league. However, I'm not sold into the idea of him totally 100% being here in Detroit. Like is he going to be 100% focused on the Detroit Lions instead of his family or whatever, his health, whatever else he's got going on?
Dude's so used to winning. What he might sulk if we're
right.
losing.
Like he'd be obviously a big name and a hot name, but he has, as far as I know, he doesn't have any NFL head coaching experience. So I don't know if there'd be anything there. There's no track record to go off of there. So I don't know. I don't know if it would be a good name to bring in. I wouldn't put him towards the top of my candidates. I wouldn't. He's not. And would I prefer him over Jim Harbaugh? Yes, he at least wins. Mm-hmm. and as far as I know, like I obviously I don't even know, but I would think he would seem like he would at least want to coach football more than Jim Harbaugh does right now. So, and I also don't think Harbaugh is just a very good coach. I think he's been very fortunate in his in the success he's had. But versus Urban Meyer, I do think is a very good head coach. I just don't know if he's a very good NFL head coach. Very good college coach. I'm not quite sold on him being a very good NFL head coach. So, but and one more point and one more question I wanted to ask you. And this is something that I actually tweeted out yesterday after watching the 49ers come pull and upset the Arizona Cardinals and essentially put the Arizona Cardinals in a pretty drastic situation in the NFC playoff hunt because they no longer control their own destiny. The Bears actually control the destiny in the wild card there. With the way that the 49ers defense plays for Robert Saleh and the way that they get up and the way that they are so excited and so hyped to play for him, does that make you lean Robert Saleh a little bit more than Eric Bieniemy? Because I'll be honest with you, up until this point, I was an Eric Bieniemy guy. That was my number one candidate through and through, no doubt. That's who I want. But after watching the way that those players played for Robert Saleh, and mind you, they were down two of their top defensive backs. Mm-hmm. So the way to see them step up and the way they played for Robert Saleh and how excited and hyped they are and how they play for him, honestly, to see that level of energy and that level of camaraderie and that mentality come into Detroit is something I don't know that we've seen in a long time. I know players love to play for Jim Caldwell, but they certainly didn't get excited like that for Jim Caldwell.
Yeah. No, I definitely, it definitely makes me even higher on Robert Saleh. It's one of the reasons that I was super high on him to begin with is because he has a way to get the players to buy in. I mean, you look at this Niners defense. This is one of the most banged up defensive units in the NFL. And yeah, they've had their missteps in some games, but on the whole, they've still been a very solid defense to very good defense at times. And that's a lot of that's testament to one, Robert Saleh's defensive scheming, and two, his ability to rally his players. And there's also a little bit of bias that the Lebanese connection, but it's a big selling point for me in a head coach is you got to get your players to buy in. That's one of the big issues that occurred with Matt Patricia is players kind of turned on him almost immediately. So
absolutely,
it would be a refreshing change of pace.
Absolutely, it would, and to have that hometown connection and having been a Dearborn Fordson coach at one point, it would obviously get the fans in on him right away. So he'd have them behind him, along with the fact that I think he's a guy who players just want to play for. So I think players would want to come here and play for him, and that's something that the Lions haven't had in a while either. So with that being said,
it's not just hiring another defensive-minded coach. Don't think it's Patricia all over again. Like, no, this is a completely different coaching style than Matt Patricia had. So
absolutely.
Don't think you're going to get shades of Matt Patricia again.
So, I mean, obviously with Robert Saleh, he would have to appoint the right offensive coordinator to be in control of the offense and be the guy there. But regardless, whereas I've been an Eric Bieniemy guy through and through, like that's been my number one candidate, I'm starting to change my tune a little bit. I'm starting to get more and more excited about the possibility of Robert Saleh coming to being the head coach here. He was always my number 2. Well, now it's more of a 1 and 1A situation for me.
Yeah, I think you have 2 really, really, really good candidates that I hope you don't whiff on both. Let's put it that way.
I would hope not too.
All right, let's move on to some hoops. The Pistons had their first 2 games of the season. 2 losses, both in similar fashion. The Pistons had strong starts to both games. Well, really, the strength came in the third quarter for the Pistons against the Cavs, but both games ended with the Pistons turning the ball over a lot and giving up some significant leads late in the game to eventually lose the basketball game. I want to start off with this. Before we go into these specific games, one thing I'd wanted to cover early on from when this article was published. So James Edwards, who covers the Pistons for The Athletic, he put on a bold predictions article on Wednesday. So right before the season was about to start. I wanted to run a quick buy sell with you on these, and then we can get into some specifics on what happened in the last 2 games. And obviously, we have the bit of a benefit of hindsight in terms of we've seen this team play 2 regular season games, whereas when this was published, it hadn't played a regular season game yet. But to start, bold prediction number 1 from James Edwards was that the Pistons will have a bottom 5 offense. Do you buy that, or do you sell that?
Oh, I think we've talked about this a lot in on this show in the last couple of weeks, and absolutely, I think they'll have a bottom 5 offense. You could be looking at the worst offense in the NBA, potentially. They don't really have a true elite level scorer on that team, and Blake Griffin used to be, but he's not quite there anymore. And I really don't even.
He looked the part against Cleveland, but you can't expect that every night.
But how long is that going to continue?
Exactly.
Blake Griffin is not the same player he used to be. So again, I do think that this team is going to be a bottom 5 offense without a doubt.
Mm-hmm. And I agree 100% for all the points you just said. We don't have the offensive firepower to be an even decent offense. This is going to be more judging from the preseason, though, it hasn't really amassed itself in the regular season yet. This is going to be more of a defense first team. That brings me to bold prediction number 2, which is Detroit will have a top 15 defense. It was certainly looking that way in the preseason, but the first 2 games of the regular season have told a bit of a different story. What's your take on this, Nick?
I'm still saying that I think they'll be in the top 15. I'd say that they may even go as far as being in the top 10. I think this team is a team that really plays up defensively. They're scrappy. They make you pay for getting by and going to the lane. It's a team that I think plays with a chip on their shoulder, and that lends to effectiveness on the defensive end. So I think that they will play a little bit better defensively as things move on. So I'll say yes, top 15 for sure.
Yeah, I actually agree with you, because I think a big issue of the points that we've given up in the first couple games.
Well, one, they went double OT against the Cavs.
Well,
so
there's that. But a big part of it has actually been turnovers. And, I mean, to the Cavs, I believe they gave up like 21 points off of turnovers, or 31 points off of turnovers.
Well, I do expect this team to turn the ball over a lot. Having a rookie point guard in Killian Hayes, rookie point guards tend to turn the ball over a lot. Blake usually turns it over a lot. Derrick Rose turns it over a lot. So I think you're going to see this team turn the ball over a lot.
I agree. And in training camp, it was, Coach Casey even said it outright, like turnovers are an issue with this team, like already. All I'm saying is if you can find a way to mitigate the turnovers, even by like 20%, you're already looking at lowering opponent score totals. Now, I don't know what we're going to be what James Edwards is judging top 15 defense on, if it's opponent score or what it is, but I do think that because we have a lot of defense first guys, I mean, every guy we took in the draft, for example, is a defense first guy. You bring in Jeremy Grant, who's a versatile defender. I do think that you have the players necessary to be a top 15 defense. So I will buy that.
For sure.
Number 3, if the Pistons can't trade a healthy Blake Griffin during the season, he'll opt out of his deal in the summer.
I actually think that's a possibility, but it'll depend ever so much on how he plays and if he stays healthy this season. If he doesn't stay healthy, I don't think he opts out. I think he opts in. If he does stay healthy, though, and has a solid season, I think he may opt out and look to go elsewhere, get some money on a 1-and-1, and try to play for a winner. He's still chasing that title, and I think he's going to I do think that there's some potential there with that. Because I think he kind of sees the writing on the wall that he's probably not part of the future of this organization.
Yeah.
They're not building around him anymore. They're going to build around draft picks. So I think he's going to look to go elsewhere and probably play for a winner.
Yeah, he'd be opting out of like nearly $40 million, which is insane to me. But I think he doesn't opt out.
He could potentially get $40 million on a 1-1.
I don't know if any team's giving him that.
If he stays healthy and plays effectively, he could potentially get up to. I mean, you could be looking at 30 plus, 35 or 30 or 35 mil for a 1-1 for him to go play elsewhere and play for a winner. I think it's entirely possible. Is he going to get 40? No, it's not. It's not a supermax situation. But is he getting upwards of 30 mil? Yes, probably. And I think he'd be willing, with the amount of money he already has, I think he'd be willing to take a $10 million pay cut to go play and win.
I mean, it's certainly possible. I'm on the side lean that he's probably gonna take he's probably gonna get his bag last season, get that 38, 39 mil that he's owed, and then spend like his 33 to 38 years championship chasing. That's where I think he's
possible.
But I do think he takes that final giant payday. I think he doesn't opt out. So I'll sell that. Moving on, number 4, Derrick Rose gets traded. Buy or sell?
Buy. I'm going to buy it just because I think that he's going to get the opportunity to look good, and there's going to be a lot of teams that are going to be trying to add a piece at the deadline, and Derrick Rose is going to be a name that's going to come up on a lot of teams' radars. So I think that and with how aggressive that Troy Weaver was in the offseason, I expect him to be equally as aggressive with his assets, with his tradable assets during the regular season also.
I'll agree with you. And if it was any other GM, I'd be like, yeah, it's probably going to depend on how Killian Hayes develops. If he starts showing some really good signs, then Derrick Rose becomes expendable. But if not, we need Derrick Rose. But no, Troy Weaver's, he's like Trader Jack 2.0 from what I've seen. So I'll buy that as well. Moving on, number 5, Killian Hayes will earn all rookie honors. This is bold.
I'm going to say no. I'm going to sell that one. And the reason being, I don't think that he's going to show enough of I'm not entirely sure he's ready for that limelight just yet. He hasn't quite adjusted to the speed of the game. I think the first half of the season is going to be very much about learning for him and adjusting for him more so than dominating the game like some of these rookies that are out there that we are seeing. So I'm going to sell that one. I don't quite think he's going to be an all rookie guy just yet.
Yeah, prior to preseason, when it was announced that Killian Hayes was going to be starting, I probably would have been on board with this, saying just based off that you're not going to have many rookies starting, so just based off the volume he's probably going to get, I could definitely see him making one of the all-rookie teams. But right from the preseason, you could tell that he needs some time to just adjust the speed of the NBA game, get more comfortable. And I think that by the time he finally adjusts, it may be too late to be an all-rookie. And it's not like a knock on Killian Hayes. It's just the fact that he's 19. He's going to need some time to grow into his role. So
absolutely,
I'll agree on selling. Sekou Doumbouya will be in the rotation. Will be a rotation regular all season. So I'd assume by rotation regular probably means 20 minutes a game,
15, 20 minutes a game. And I'm going to buy that one. One, because I don't think there's much else on this roster that they could turn to. Besides Sekou Doumbouya. So I'll buy this because of necessity, and the opportunity is going to be there for Sekou to sink or swim throughout the entire season. So I'll buy that.
The first 2 games have been too indicative of it, but he's looked ready in the time that he's had, and it's just a matter of him getting the playing time. But I do think he's going to play his way into a bigger role this season. So I'm still going to buy it, despite what we've seen the first couple games. All right, number 7 out of 10, Saddiq Bey will earn a backup spot by the season's second half. I'll start this one off if you want.
Yeah, go ahead.
Saddiq Bey didn't play a minute in the first game, which kind of worried me. But then he got some good minutes in the Cavs game.
He played 7 minutes in the second game?
It was only 7?
6, actually. It was 6 minutes where he went 0 for 2 from the field and 0 for 2 from the line.
Now, we know Saddiq Bey. Saddiq Bey was one of the more NBA-ready players to come out of the first round of this draft. And I think Dwayne Casey came out after Game 2 and said that the reason that Saddiq Bey didn't play the reason that Saddiq Bey played against the Cavs when he wasn't in the rotation against Minnesota is because how well he's performed in practice. So I think if Saddiq Bey keeps impressing the coaches, he's going to keep getting opportunities. I do think he's NBA ready enough to solidify a role for himself on this team, and it's really an injury away for him to be.
It is absolutely
fixture the rotation. So I think I'll buy that one. I'll be honest. I think I'll buy that one.
I'm gonna buy it, but only based on by default. Because
Okay.
like you mentioned, he is one injury away from being in every rotational guy. That's the one thing, and I'm not going to say that this team is going to stay entirely healthy throughout their entire regular season, because I don't think that happens.
Yeah.
So I do think Sadiq Bey is going to get some run and probably and hopefully play himself into it. But I do think by default he does get into the rotation because of necessity. Again, there's not much else that they can turn to here. So I do think Sadiq Bey gets into the rotation, but it's by necessity.
Number 8, this is an interesting one. Josh Jackson will lead the team in technical fouls.
I'm going to sell that one. I'm going to sell it because I actually think Blake Griffin does.
I can see that just based off the volume, the amount of time the guy's on the court. He's like, but yeah, Josh Jackson was a little like he's been calm like for the most part, but like I remember some instances where he was like chirping a little bit at the refs, but I don't remember him getting teed up in the preseason. So. And obviously hasn't played as much as I would like him to in the regular season, though he's done really well in his minutes. But yeah, I'll sell that one as well, just because I don't think he's going to be on the court enough to lead the team in technical fouls. Number 9 out of 10, second to last one here. The Pistons will finish with the second worst record in the NBA.
I'll buy that. I actually do think that they could potentially end up as the worst team in the East here after what we saw against the Cavs, because that was really the one team I'd say that they'd compete with in the Eastern Conference for that bottom spot. I'll buy that. I think this offense already is really bad. And then if any injury happens at all, it gets even worse. So I'm going to buy that because this team is razor thin and there's already not a lot there.
I mean, you already lost to 2 of the lesser teams in the NBA, in the Cavs and the Timberwolves. I mean, really the only other team I think that's right there with you are the Knicks. And I mean, it's starting to look like Golden State is shockingly bad without Klay Thompson. But I agree that second worst. Ooh,
because you look at they'd compete with like maybe Charlotte, maybe Washington, maybe Cleveland.
I mean, you're already. I do think you were a bottom 3 team last year. The season had played out. You were a bottom 3 team last year.
Yes. And I don't really think they got any better this year in particular.
And I think Cleveland got better. I think Minnesota got better. So, yeah, you know what? I'll buy it.
All righty.
All right, final one. Jeremy Grant will lead the team in minutes played.
Yes.
Agreed.
And reason being, I think that they eventually give Blake some rest.
They're resting the next game against Atlanta.
Right.
Already.
And so and I think Jeremy Grant will be a guy that really doesn't get much rest because he doesn't want it. Yeah. I don't think he wants it. I think he wants to play every single night, as many minutes as he possibly can. So yes, I'm gonna say yes. I buy that.
Yeah, I agree, and basically everything you just said. I really don't have anything else to add. You basically hit on the head. He's a guy that's not going to need as much rest as Blake, and he's a focal point of this starting 5. So it's going to be him that gets the majority of the minutes along with Blake, although Blake's going to be rested, unlike him. So anyway, I think the only other guy that would compete with him is maybe DeLon Wright. And I think that's because Dwayne Casey loves the guy. But all right, let's just touch on what we saw on the court the last couple of games. Obviously, Killian Hayes, sure, he's out. He's looked a bit he looked more decisive in the preseason than he's looked in the regular season, if you ask me. Like he had one play that stuck out to me against the Cavs where he drove the lane, went up, he faked the pass, then went up for a layup, and then mid layup decided he was going to pass it again, then sailed it over the guy's head.
He's thinking too much.
Exactly. He's doing too much thinking, and I think he's got to slow down. And it's weird to say that because normally it's the other way around for rookies. Normally you say like a rookie's got to adjust to the game. The game's moving too fast for him. I think Killian Hayes is overthinking and thinking too much and just has to slow down and bring the game back down to his pace. Here's the thing though. And this is what really annoyed me about this last game is I still want to see him get more playing time because I think a big part of learning the pace of the NBA game is being out there. And that's why I was happy when Killian Hayes got named a starter. But Killian Hayes didn't see the floor the entire fourth quarter or either overtime period. And Derrick Rose was clearly gassed by the end of the fourth, and he was still out there, and then he was still out there in the both OT periods. I just don't know why we're running the vets so hard. I mean, Blake Griffin played 44 minutes. Derrick Rose played like 33, I want to say. What do you think about Dwayne Casey leaving the vets out there for these extended periods instead of giving the young guys some run?
In all honesty, I think it's a situation where they haven't played basketball in God knows how long. This is their first. everybody is itching to play. I think you'll start to see him go away from the vets as the season progresses. I think he says this is the beginning of the year. We got to go for it and see what we got at least at the beginning, see what we got. But then eventually, once things start to unfold, I'll start to get more of the young guys involved and rotate our vets out a lot more. I think it's a beginning of the year situation where we've got to at least try for it now. Otherwise, what's the point of having these guys on the roster?
Yeah.
So I think that they're going for it now just because it's beginning of the year, and that's just what we're going to see early on. But I don't expect to continue. I didn't even love it the other night. I don't think it's necessary. And I think actually it's what costed them the game against the Cavs because Derrick Rose was entirely gassed and was turning the ball over like crazy by the end of that game. So I do think that's what caused things for them to lose this game. So
he had the most turnovers on the team by more than double, or actually I think by exactly double.
Right. So I think it was a mistake for them to do that, and I think he's a good coach. He's going to learn from that and say that, okay, maybe I can't play guys like Derrick Rose and Blake Griffin 40 minutes a game, and let's go with some of our other guys and see what we got there.
Yeah, I was hoping there was one point where, really quick, I want to touch on Mason Plumlee. I think I'm starting to like him. He's really smart out there and really crafty with the ball, which, I knew he was a good passer. I didn't realize the caliber of passer he was. Maybe he was all that.
Super poor man's Nikola Jokic.
Yeah, I was about to say maybe it was all that time playing with Jokic, but he's a refreshingly smart center down low. We didn't the playmaking ability that he has in the post is something we didn't sniff with Andre Drummond. It was something I wanted.
God, no.
But, so he led the team in assists against the Cavs. But
I'd like to see Killian Hayes step it up a little bit.
Yeah, agreed. But so when Mason Plumlee fouled out, right? Jahlil Okafor was not having a great game. He was getting beat pretty consistently by Andre Drummond on the defensive side of the ball, except for one play where Jahlil Okafor got the best of Drummond, which is fun. But so when he fouled out, I kind of wanted to see us turn to Isaiah Stewart instead of run Jahlil Okafor back there, and Drummond kind of owned him in the post and towards the end of the fourth quarter. And I was hoping we could see Isaiah Stewart and let's see what he can do in this situation. Let's develop these young guys. So I didn't understand putting Ja Okafor back out there when he'd been losing that battle all night.
Well, the reason I understand is because I just straight up don't think Isaiah Stewart's ready for the show yet. I think he is so behind on getting himself ready and ready to step up and play in big time minutes, and I just don't think he's ready for that. And I think Dwayne Casey is very obviously showing that by refusing to play him. And it's just the situation of the guy's just not ready. He's not developed. He needs some work and practice and scrimmages to really get going. And I don't think you're not going to see him in games that are technically close and contested because he's just not ready. He would get abused. He's not able to handle whereas Ja Okafor wasn't playing very well against Drummond, getting dominated. I don't think it would have been anywhere even close to better with Isaiah Stewart out there based on what we've seen. So
yeah, I just wanted to see us take the shot. I wanted to get Stewart in the pace of the game. This is the NBA, son. Learn it.
Well, thing is you're playing with the mentality that we don't necessarily want the Pistons to win a bunch of games.
Exactly. Yeah.
And he's playing with the mentality of, I know this guy's not ready. I got to go with what I have and know is ready and what I know I have, and that's Ja Okafor. Yeah. Because he wants to win this game.
I would have even been interested in maybe trying to give Saku some minutes at center, see what he could do down there. But
I think Drummond would have bodied the hell out of him.
Drummond had a pretty insane stat line against us, by the way.
He had an interesting stat line.
I was really annoyed that he put the team on his back and the free throw line in the fourth quarter. That was really ironic. And for all the flack that us Pistons fans gave him about free throws.
It did.
You could tell he was relishing in hitting those free throws. So, but yeah, overall, it's the first two games of the season both went exactly the way I thought in terms of the turnovers, and didn't go the way I thought because the turnovers weren't on the part of the Rooks and more so on the part of the Vets. So I'm just kind of wondering what Dwayne Casey's goal with this season is. Is he trying to play? Obviously he's trying to play to win, but is development as big of a goal as they made it out to be in the preseason? Because that's what I'm worried about, because that's what I'm seeing is not being a thing right now. Is development's not a primary goal at this point.
I think it's way too early to tell. It's game 2 of 72 or 71, whatever it is. There's so much time left for these guys to develop, for these young guys to develop. And like I said, right now, it's so early on in the year, and he's going to at least go for to see what he's got. Because regardless of whether or not we want to see the young guys, some of these vets are still trying are still playing for a rotational spot next year or a roster spot next year. So they're as much trying out as these young guys are. Yeah. So we do need to see them in an extended run as well.
Jeremy Grant's got a huge chip on his shoulder. He's playing to prove that he's worth a contract and could maybe even get a giant contract when this one's up. Like, he's still in that age where he can get one.
Exactly. And guys like Josh Jackson, who did play almost 30 minutes in game 1 against the Wolves, and he honestly was the best player on the floor for the Pistons. He put up 19 points, 6 boards. He shot well. He only had 2 turnovers, and he played very well. And against the Cavs, he didn't play as many minutes. He only played 19, which really didn't make sense to me. But he was tied for the team high in plus minus, a plus 9, and the other person was Ja Okafor. So, but he had 6 points, 8 boards, so he's obviously going to be a guy who's around the ball when it's loose, and he brings energy. And so guys like Josh Jackson, they're playing for roster spots here. So we may see more of these vets a little bit early on in the season for that reason than some of these young guys. But I do think it evens out a little bit towards as time goes by. But for now, this is what we're going to see. And I'm not surprised by it. It's just, I'd like to, it's almost like I want to fast forward to like game 50 to see how things are then.
But now coming up, we do have games against, this week we do have games against the Hawks and the Celtics. And and the Warriors. So we're talking about 2 games against really good point guards and Trae Young and Steph Curry. And I really want to see, because defensively is where I think Killian's strength has been so far in his very, very, very young career. But I really want to see how he holds his own against some of the elite point guards in the league. I'm expecting him to get destroyed, but I want to see if he can hold his own. And so I'm hoping he gets some really meaningful minutes against these guys, and we'll see what happens. But I'm going to try not to overreact.
I mean, yeah, I would. It is going to be. I'm nervous about him playing up against some of these elite guards. I'll be honest with you, because from what I've seen, it seems like the game moves a little bit too quick for him at this point in time, and he thinks a little bit too much. And going up against some of these elite point guards, it's going to make that even worse. Yeah. And so I defensively, I do think he's got a lot of talent there and a lot of a good head on his shoulders, but it only takes the right player to really take him to school, and I don't want him to get discouraged because that happens. So
that could be an issue.
I don't want him to have the mentality that, I can't cut it in the NBA because this happened. So I am nervous about it, but I am excited to see how he does against some of the premier guards in the league for sure.
Yeah, and then I'm just in general how our defense is going to hold up against a team like the Celtics is another thing I'm very interested in seeing because throughout the preseason and the first games of the regular season, we've had the benefit of playing really bad teams. So I want to. This will be a test to see: is do we actually have a pretty decent defense, or do we really suck? So we'll see. Did you have anything you wanted to touch on with the Pistons, or that's all I had?
That pretty much covers it. I hope to see Josh Jackson get more involved and have more opportunity. I hope to see Killian Hayes get trusted in some of the crunch time situations. So
yeah,
but for what it is now, I mean, there's really not too much to overreact on in the first couple of games of the season. They pretty much are what we expected them to be. Piss poor offensively, but possibly a solid defensive team. Granted, the double OT game kind of skews things, but regardless, I do think that this team is not going to win a ton of games, and that's kind of what I want, because I want them to continue to build through the draft and get some really, really high-end talent on this roster.
I have a feeling we're going to start draft talk pretty early this season.
That's fine with me.
My biggest question is can Caleb Cunningham play the 2? That's my biggest question, because
I don't know. Yeah. I don't know. I just hope we're in a spot. I just hope that we're in a spot that's a conversation we get to have.
There you go.
Alrighty, is that all you got?
That's all I have.
All right, that is going to close it out for this week, guys. Thank you again for listening. We will catch you next week. This has been the Fan Reporters by fans.
For fans.
Follow us on Twitter at Real Fan Report. We are continuing to drop our fantasy football podcast, The Fanalists, as the NFL playoffs move on, and as we move into the NFL playoffs and the rest of the way with a DFS focus. So, check that out. It's the Fantasy Fanalists on Detroit Sports Podcast. Thank you to them as well, as always. And thank you to you guys. We will catch you next week. Hope you had a Merry Christmas, and I hope you have a Happy New Year. Stay safe, stay happy, and we'll see you guys next week. Have a good one.
Peace.